To hold and give and do it at the right time. And the right time is now for this bollocks podcast about the Soccers. Jack Atkins, Clive F., the illustrious man that you are. How are you this fine snowy Wednesday morning?
Is it snowy up there, is it?
Right, it is. It's a light dusting, they call it in the trade, I do believe, on the floor.
Oh, fantastic, because I'm getting an early train into Newcastle tomorrow, so it looks like I'm going to have to pack me all-weather boots. But apart from that, I've just had a week off, and now I'm back. That's about it.
Don't look too happy about that fact.
What about the fact I had a week off, or about the fact I'm back?
The fact you're back. You seem absolutely cock-a-hoop as potentially what might have happened on this day in football history. Clive, tell us what happened, Clive.
Well, Ross...
I watched the young ones yesterday for the first time in a while for no reason whatsoever, and it's just where Rick's like, Cliff!
The people's poet is dead, Ross.
He is dead after what he did in front of Alison Hammond last week, the scoundrel, the bastard. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
What a twat.
But then, I mean, we are heading into the festive period, and, say what you want about mistletoe and wine, but Saviour's Day is a banger, so we'll leave it at that.
You get the sway on. It's a wonderful swaying song. Anyway, what happened on this day in football history, Clive?
Well, Ross, November 29th is the day we're recording. In 1990, a Man United youth player received his first professional contract on his 17th birthday.
Oh.
His name was Ryan Giggs.
Oh, speaking of scoundrels.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, he's definitely fat-shamed people, Ryan Giggs.
I reckon if you put a list of bad things people have done, Giggs is ticked off at least half. Is there a list of bad things people have done? I'm not saying like he's done anything, overly bad. Well, he has done stuff that's overly bad. He's horrible. I'm going to stop talking. He's a prick.
In terms of legally speaking,
yes.
Legally bad things, yes. 2009, Chelsea 3, Arsenal 2 in the league. From Drogba, an own goal for Thomas Vermaelen, and Chelsea were firmly top of the league at this point. Yeah. It's a very quiet day in football history. I did my research yesterday on the 28th and got mixed up and thought, loads happened today. I was like, oh no, hang on, that's the wrong day.
Give us a little flavour of what went down yesterday. Can you remember anything from yesterday?
Of course I can't. I can't remember anything from actual yesterday either. But I just remember it going, that's good. I think it was the first game to be played under floodlights. George Best turning out for, I think, Preston North End. That plane crash in Brazil a few years ago. That was November 28th. But instead today, it's Casey Keller, Nathan Dyer, and Ken Munku's birthday. And let's not forget Eddie Howe as well. Happy birthday, Eddie Howe.
Is it his birthday? Congratulations, Eddie Howe, for making it through another year of these referees. But more on them a little bit later on. I don't know what to say there. Casey Keller, I always remember him as being absolutely wank when we were kids. I remember him turning out for Tottenham. He was wank. I think there was Leicester in there before that.
There was Leicester,
He was wank. But of course, he went from having hair to having no hair. So I guess you have a little bit of a special place in your heart for him.
Of course, yeah. Of course I do. Me and only other bald man, Casey Keller. I remember as a kid him being a novelty because of being an American footy player and often wearing a cap. You're like, oh. It was like only him and David James were like cap wearers out on the pitch. I was like, look at him, renegade. Oh.
And then Gabor Kirali came in for Crystal Palace and ripped up the rule book. There's caps, there's sweaty joggers, there's all sorts going on.
The glory days of mental goalkeepers, as we were saying a few weeks ago. That was another one, actually. On November 28th, back in the day, it was one of the days that Jose Luis Chilavert scored a hat-trick. So there we go. Could have had some Chilavert talk, but no. Instead, we get Ken Monku's birthday.
Why is Chilavert the only goalkeeper to have done what he did? Why is he the only one? Free kicks, penalties, goals galore.
I don't know. It must have been a training thing. And not only that, it was the fact that on his his keeper top. He didn't have the sponsor. He had his own logo of a big bulldog with the thumb up, didn't he? He was mental.
Oh, man. Bring on more Chilavers. Anyway, we move on to the Champions League headlines from last night. There's only one real big headline to go for. It involves my team, so of course I'm going to be a little bit of a pissy bitch this morning. But I do think, speaking of those pissy bitches, Jurgen Klopp and Mikel Arteta should watch Eddie Howe's decorum and class and sophistication from after the game last night there, Jack Atkins.
No, disagree with you. I watched his comments and he's like, we played well, but we were robbed. No, I want fury. I want piss. I want vinegar. If you're robbed from blatant cheating, I want my manager to be fuming. But like you said, he did handle it in a classy manner, but I don't mind a tetchy manager where's your boss.
He drinks his cups of tea with a little finger in the air, does Eddie Howe. Anyway, the game, on the balance of play, I'm not going to sit here and say that Paris Saint-Germain did not deserve to win the game. They had 31 attempts on goal to Newcastle's 5, something mental like that. Newcastle defended valiantly. Eddie Howe didn't make a single substitution in the entire 100 minutes, which is making me fearful for Saturday's game against Man United, because we're all going to be absolutely knackered. I think we can call on Matt Ritchie, and that is it, and a couple of youngsters like Alex Murphy, who couldn't be named in the Champions League squad last night for one reason or another. Matt Ritchie's not in the squad. I don't know why we couldn't name the under-19s, but there we go. That was a rule. So last night on the bench, we had Karius, we had Gillespie, we had Dubravka, we had the two goalkeepers, we had Paul Dummett, we had Lewis Hall, and we had 3 children. That was the bench he had last night, so he made no substitutions at all. So yeah, it was a fantastic display last night from Newcastle. I thought, really, disciplined and other words like that from the football book of cliches. But of course, it all comes down to the decision at the end. I did a video last night because I was that furious. I was joining the likes of Tim Sherwood and Paul Merson in my fury last night at what went down. And who else was? It was Ali McCoist. He was beside himself after the game, Ali McCoist, because earlier in the game, Lewis Miley had the same thing happen to him. The ball struck him on the thigh, hits him on the hand, no penalty. Tino Livramento, arguably less of a penalty because his arm's sort of like, he hasn't got his arm fully outstretched like he's directing traffic, or he's an air traffic controller on the runway. He's just sort of got it like bent under himself, kind of. But it hits him on the tit, hits him on the hand, and I just think the referee caved because of the atmosphere and gave the penalty right at the end when it really mattered. Again, on the balance of play, PSG fully were deserving of their draw, so I'm not going to be too pissy and moany about it, but it's just the fact that the legislation literally says in instances like this, they're not penalties, but that was given as a penalty last night.
Yeah, it was absolutely disgusting. Like you said, on the balance of play, PSG definitely deserved to come away with something, but going with your pure heart, no, they didn't at the same time. Like you said, a valiant display, especially in defence. Ridiculous. Especially when you got Neymar doing all like little, was it that back heel shot that went straight at Pope?
I think you mean Mbappé, Jack Atkins.
Mbappé, sorry, yes. I was just thinking of Nick Pope's wonderful form. It was like, it doesn't matter who shot against him. So going forward then, you've got Milan at home, haven't you, for your last game? And you need a win and you need PSG to draw.
Yeah, we need ideally PSG, well, draw or lose, I think, because of a goal difference. Because now after that, it completely changed the group. We were second in the group behind Borussia Dortmund, who qualified last night after their 3-1 win against AC Milan. Up the Gittins from the Hats career mode, doing it in real life for Borussia Dortmund. But yeah, their win last night, it puts them on 10 points. Now PSG are on 7, and then Newcastle and Milan are on 5 points each, but Milan's goal difference, I think, is -4 and Newcastle's a 0. So we need Newcastle to win and then PSG to lose to get through to the knockout rounds of the Champions League, which, if at the start of the game last night, if you're going to offer me that scenario, I'm thinking, well, we must have done quite well last night, but it's heartbreaking because they did create a couple of good chances, but they were mainly like shooting from distance. There was a couple of ones where they did miss a couple of sitters. I think Mbappé, when he tried the flick at the start of the game. And then there was the guy who I always called Barcode, but his name's Barcola. He came on in the second half and he missed a couple of sitters as well. But apart from that, I thought Newcastle were... We did a lot better than I thought we were going to do. With the team and the players that we had available, we held, but then we gave at the right moments. John Barnes was smiling.
We were talking, a week or two ago about the apparent crisis that Newcastle were under. You had no players, etc. And like you said, even though you had like children on the bench and Loris Karius. The fact that you've got this result and, as we'll come to talk to later, performances in the Premier League, I'd be feeling somewhat buoyant as a fan. The fact that you're coming out of PSG in Paris and feeling like, oh, we've been robbed there, that's amazing.
Yeah, imagine saying that 2 years ago about Steve Bruce's Newcastle. Oof.
Imagine saying it just Joe Linton.
But I guess we need to talk about VAR. We've been saying it on the podcast for a long time. I did see a couple of comments on the video I put out last night of people going, oh, it's only bad now because it's happened in Newcastle. And I was like, at least watch the content that we're making before chatting absolute bollocks. VAR
needs... say this since day one.
I know, we say it every week, don't we? No matter who's involved. Go back to when Liverpool and Spurs is the big one, Luton and Wolves, which is where my sort of... Gary O'Neill exposed this ruling to me in the Premier League when I think it was Nunez for Wolves. I might be wrong there, but the ball hit him, I think, on his leg, then his hand. It gave Luton a penalty when in the legislation in the Premier League, which I've been led to believe is pretty much the same as the Champions League, because there was recommendations made at the start of the season by IFAB and other corrupt bodies like that. I don't know what's the corrupt. But yeah, apparently just that is the rules. If it hits a one body part then hits the other, it's not a penalty. I don't know why the referee didn't give it for Miley and then did give it at the end of the game, when initially he didn't give it. But it's this VAR open it up to several more subjective levels of potential human error. In terms of big decisions like that, I'm fully on board now. We've been a little bit on the fence, haven't we? I think, have we been on the fence? I can't remember if I actually said it needs to go.
You've said it needs to go. I've said that there are elements of it that, for me, could work if tweaked. But you've said just out and out get rid.
I've changed my opinion slightly after last night. For offsides and goal line technology, it stays. It's fine. But for subjective decisions like that one last night, where the referee on the pitch initially didn't give it as a penalty, but then two lads in Le Stockley-le Parc in France have brought him around and made him change his decision. So when it comes to like calls for fouls and whatnot, I'm more at peace. And this goes back to other teams being involved as well. It's not just Newcastle. I'm more at peace at one human's error rather than two or three humans' errors.
Yeah. And it, like you're saying, the ref flapped it as well. You say the occasion, was it the 96th minute as well?
Yeah.
And then the actual one of the big criticisms we, amongst many others, have had of VAR is the kind of subjective imagery. Like, it showed it cascading off his tit onto his arm. It showed it a few times and then held the screenshot of it hitting his arm. And obviously that's going to be the mental image burnt into the ref's head. And
they showed it in slow motion as well, which doesn't tell the picture at all how close the ball, well, the guy, I forget who kicked the ball actually towards him, but how close he was to Livramento's tits. He was right next to them. He couldn't get out the way. And I was saying the Flash couldn't get out the way, and he's the fastest human being I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I've never seen anything involving the Flash. I just know that he goes wow wow.
He is apparently fast. He's like that hedgehog.
Sonic. Up the Sonic. But yeah, it is a shame because this referee that we had last night, I've got his name written down here, and I'm going to completely butcher the pronunciation. Marciniak. Oh, God. Whatever his name is. He refereed the Champions League final and the World Cup final, so apparently he is the best in the business. He's the modern day... Oh, I've forgotten his bald compadre's name.
Pierluigi Collina.
Pierluigi Collina. Thank you very much, Jack Atkins. It's early in the morning here, so he did have a fantastic game up until...
We swapped roles then. That was amazing.
Up until it really hampered my team. Like, he had a great game up until then. But it was true, though, because he was giving yellow cards when they were yellow cards. He was giving fouls when they were fouls. It was a seamless game up until at the end there where VAR scuppered his opinion, in my opinion.
Yeah, because like we said before, it's ruining... It is ruining the game. And again, it's the unknown. In that final 90 seconds, Newcastle may have conceded, but we don't know. And if Newcastle don't progress through the Champions League, then that will have cost you a lot of money as well. Yeah. And that's all football comes down to, unfortunately, in the 21st century, is money.
We'll not mention the Skriniar foul where he handles the ball on the floor when Isak's through one-on-one. We'll try and not mention that one, but there we go. Newcastle can... I think I'm proud to be a Newcastle fan today. We did well. We did well in the game, but we go now to the Premier League, game week 13. Let me tell you, this was the hardest, because we don't do every game, otherwise we'd be here all bloody day. This was the hardest weekend so far this season to narrow down into a fair few games, because every game slapped. Apart from the one that featured the two heavyweights, but because of the two heavyweights, I feel like we've got to talk about them anyway.
I was expecting us to talk about Tottenham and Villa at one point as well, but like you said, there was that much going on that it had to hit the deck.
Well, let's touch on Tottenham versus Villa. Hey, 3 defeats in a row now. Postecoglou out.
Oh, are you over Ange Ball, are you?
Yes, it's terrible. Forget about his injuries. Forget about all sorts. Forget about the fact they're still, I reckon, batting above their average for what people expected for them at the start of the season. I'm sitting here saying it with no irony or satire in my voice at all. Ange Postecoglou out.
And I'm sat here with no irony in my voice saying that I am absolutely terrified of Aston Villa.
They are good, aren't they? I was watching Match of the Day 2 for this game. I couldn't see the whole game live, but they were just saying how Emery is making these changes at the right moment and they're always paying off. Like Matty Cash, his foul on Bentancur was... It was horrible, right? We'll say it's horrible, but it really made me smile because it made me remember of years gone by, a bygone era in football that doesn't exist anymore. He sized down Bentancur. He deserved his yellow card. It could have been given as a red. We've seen them given for less in this modern game that we call professional association football, but it's made me well up now.
It's 2 words come to mind, Ross, and those words are blood and thunder. That's all I'm saying.
2 words are coming to my mind, and it's David and Batty. But Villa are looking very, very good. Obviously, Pau Torres gets the first goal, and Watkins, what a finish that was.
Oh, my God. We were saying last week doing our team of the season that Watkins both narrowly missed out of both of our team of the season so far, but if, like you said, a hat-trick helped him become a 1 and 2 player, but if he's keeping up this form, I don't know how far Villa can go, honestly.
I think
considering how
they're tied with you now at the minute, aren't they?
Or a point. Yes, they're tied with us. We're third. They're fourth, I think, on 28 points. City on 29, Arsenal 30.
Yeah.
But it's close. Jesus Christ.
It's close, Jesus Christ. I mean, Newcastle are the lowest one there in 7th. I think we're on 23, so we're just 5 points away from those mighty Reds. And speaking of those Reds, they went to the Etihad Stadium where Jurgen Klopp hadn't won since his first season in charge of Dem Reds back in 2015, which I thought was a shock.
Yeah, we don't do well at the Etihad, but we do well in the league, and we usually do all right at Anfield, which is the case for most teams, isn't it? Away, home, yeah. But I was dreading this game, absolutely dreading this game. Went out for a nice breakfast with my friends, went to a lovely pub called the Queen of Hope Street. It was my favourite kind of weather. It was dead sunny, it was really cold, and we were sat there just like not looking forward to this.
But the game itself, it went all right, I thought, for Liverpool. Yes, Manchester City, I didn't feel got out of second gear again as they haven't done for large parts of the season. But whereas in normal games, they're still steamroller teams, Liverpool kept themselves in it. They didn't really have too many clear-cut chances, I thought, Manchester City. And then Trent, who narrowly misses out on my highlight of the week this week because he's got that new boot deal with Adidas and he's brought sexy back Jack Atkins like Justin Timberlake. He's brought back the tongued predator.
I know. Because people had noticed that on social media beforehand, because Liverpool, probably like Newcastle, it's very much an Adidas city. Casual culture and all that, get the badge. No,
that's Stone Island. Don't get that badge in. You're a nonce if you do that.
People were saying, is he wearing white Preds? I think he launched the white Predator and was it... Bellingham launched the new Black Predator, I think, for Dortmund, but both at the same time. And Adidas must be... I've had a week off. And also, everyone knows I'm 6 months behind everything else. But Adidas must be absolutely thanking their lucky stars because the advert they got for that shoe in that game, Brilliant. You couldn't pay for it.
Was a pinger into the far bottom corner before that. But I want to talk about Alisson, because I want to know a Liverpool fan's opinion on his game, because it was such a weird game. Yes, he makes a couple of good saves, but his kicking, what was he doing? In the first half, he's trying to pick out a counter-attack. He kicks it straight to Phil Foden, gets away with it because Foden strikes it straight at him. The kick out for the first goal for Haaland, I guess it's harsh to go like that's a mistake from Alisson, but he did slip. He was maybe overzealous a bit in his execution of the kick. If you are being an arsehole about it, which I don't want to be, but this is what people are saying, aren't they? He slipped on his arse, which sort of led to Ake doing a jinking run, like a slalom skier, before playing in Haaland. Haaland has a look over his shoulder before he gets the ball, which I thought was, just seeing that slowed down in slow-mo, it felt like he was a superhero, like Batman. Utility belt, but it's a neck on a shoulder. I don't know what I'm saying there. And he puts it in the far corner to become the fastest Premier League player to 50 goals in 48 games, above Newcastle's Andy Cole, who took 65, and Shearer for Blackburn, who took 66.
Yeah, he's a awesome player, isn't he? I like the fact that you've mentioned both the Flash and Batman in the space of about 5 minutes. As for Alisson, again, this is getting a little bit of, a Liverpool fan moaning, but for the 500th time we've had the early kickoff after an international break. Never mind the fact that the core of our team now is South American. Alisson played for Brazil, Edison didn't for City, and all of City's injured players came back all right for the league, didn't they? But Alisson, he had a shocker. He did make some really good saves, like you said, but his distribution, I just think he was knackered. McAllister had said after the game that in the lead up to the training, when they were having team meetings, he was that tired that he was nodding off at times. So, yeah, I think we were just battered, really, but managed to come through it. When I saw the team set up, I thought, if we can get at their three, we'll have a field day here. But they won the midfield. Even though, again, our midfield, I think Alexis McAllister had a fantastic game. It's not like our midfield played bad. I just think their midfield were more drilled for the majority of it.
Yeah. But I forget about the international break when it comes to South American players and the travel that they do, because we do at Newcastle have Bruno Guimaraes and J7 who turned up for Brazil. Joe Linton's red card for Brazil. Did you see that, by the way?
No, I didn't see it.
He just sort of went... As the guy, he's running side by side with the fella, and he goes, and he gets given a red card. It's the worst red card I've ever seen. But yeah, they come back and they're absolutely fine. So I'm going to say your excuse for Alisson being tired is misplaced, sir.
Did you have the 12:30 kickoff though for the 400th time?
We had 3 p.m, which is 2 hours away. It's not that different. So yeah, but again, we got to speak about Alisson because it was a big talking point of the game. In my opinion, that thing from the corner, it was not a foul. Yes, the hand is there. But my God, that wouldn't keep down a floating candy floss Jack Atkins.
Wow, it's strong words there from Ross Tweddell.
I was trying to think of something that rises, but is really soft. That wouldn't keep down an erect phallus, Jack Atkins.
You can hang a wet towel off it, Ross. I'm obviously gonna. I can't separate my bias on this one.
No, take your blinkers off. You're a football pundit when you're sat here, Jack Atkins. Tell me if it's a penalty or not in your unbiased football journalist opinion.
I've seen them given either way, Ross. In the pub, there was instant uproar, like a straight to my feet kind of. That has to be ruled off. Soft, definitely soft, but it's the rules of the game. Weirdly, though, I tried to skirt around this without giving a definitive answer. It wasn't as mardy a game as I'd expected. I think the amount of red cards we've had this season already and the fact that it's becoming less of a contact sport has really played into our psyche a little bit, because we weren't really throwing in tackles. We weren't going all blood and thunder like Matty Cash, like you said. And it was surprising. I felt like we played like a bit like, on the back foot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But you would do at the Etihad, though. I thought you were, maybe City were the better team because they were just having lots and lots and lots of the ball. But I thought Liverpool really hung in there and they could have nicked it towards the end. But I think you're taking a point there, aren't you, surely?
I was taking a point before the ball kicked off. Like you said, if we haven't won there years in the league. So Yeah, and the fact that we're in the point adrift of City now, fantastic.
Yeah. Anything to say about Trent Skull? I don't think we covered that massive. We're just speaking about his boots rather than the goal itself.
At the time, I thought I broke my knuckle punching the table that hard.
What made you punch the table?
We just sat there banging the table going, yes. My mates were 6 pints of Guinness deep each, and this is about 1:15. So they were just there, just going, need another poo. And I was punching it. It's just one of those. It's just how we react in the moment. But it was beautiful. I really liked the celebration because, of course, I did.
Fantastic pictures whenever anybody does that these days. You get a couple of camera phone wankers in the crowd who are the day trippers, obviously, but the unison of like flicking the V's at the player is always sensational.
As it should be, yeah, it should be. Like, don't be throwing coins or anything, but flick the V's, definitely. I can't see that die. The thing I have liked about it this weekend, and with Trent's displays for England during the international break, is the kind of discourse has changed once again from people saying, oh, he's crap, he's really crap, to people saying, oh, he's a generational talent, we just need to coach his defensive work a bit better, especially with what happened to Reece James, which we'll talk about soon.
And with Tino Livramento. I don't know if you watched the game last night, but he was 10 out of 10 again.
Oh, he's beautiful, yeah.
Oh, what a player. What a player. Surely going to get an England call-up soon. If Rico Lewis is getting in there, Tino should be there nearly soon as well. Right, we go over to the Ev from the Reds. They lost 3-0 at home to Manchester United. But this, of course, was a big news game because it was the first game after the points deduction. Hannah to Everton, they've appealed it. We're still waiting to see if the appeal is going to come to fruition, or, you know, be a bit less harsh, as I think we all think it should be.
Yeah, I had this one on live, and my missus was saying, why are you watching Everton versus Man United? And I was like, because I thought the Ev were going to come flying out of the traps for this one. My nephew came back from Salford for this one. They were part of the demonstration. And while I think the wording of the demonstration was a bit misjudged, it was nice to see them take action at the same time, if you know what I mean.
It's not the word corrupt, is it? It's the wrong word to use, corrupt, because what they've done, in like handing Everton some sort of like ramifications for their overspending is fine. I think everyone's happy with that. It's just, are they self-serving? I'm trying to think of the right words, but it wouldn't look good on a banner, that would it? The Premier League are self-serving. The Premier League are insincere. The Premier League got ever so slightly hypocritical, I do believe.
The Premier League needs to take a long, good, hard look at themselves in the mirror. There was a really good piece by Martin Samuel in The Telegraph this past week of him talking about it, saying that he's not an Everton fan as far as I'm aware. I think he's a Cockney, so I don't think there's too many Cockney Everton fans. But he was saying it was more, he felt that Everton were hard done by because the kind of the overspending rule, he says, is a Premier League and FA drawn up thing, if you know what I mean. It isn't out and out cheating. It's more just kind of like bad book management, but also a gamble they have to take to try and break into the top six, if you know what I mean. Like we're saying, corrupt doesn't really feel right because they have, whether you agree with the rule or not, they did break the rule and they have been done for it. It just feels, I think the corruption side of it just seems to come from how quickly, like we were saying the other week, how quickly they've reached the decision.
Yeah, but again, on the flip side of that, they play devil's advocate in front of you now, Jack Atkins. They were given warnings by the Premier League themselves, like, no, steady now, you are getting a bit close to breaking these rules 3 or 4 times apparently, and they still went and did it, so cheers for that. Farhad Moshiri, you dick. As for the game itself, I was disgusted by Sky Sports' attempt to cover up the protests. I was watching that game and it was just, when it was in the 10th minute, wasn't it, where the entire stadium put those placards up, and the way they sort of zoomed in on the pitch to not put any of the crowd in. I know Sky Sports pay the Premier League a lot of money, and maybe the Premier League were like, oh, could you help us out here a little bit, lads, by not highlighting the issue. But it's for the fans, man. Sky Sports is not there to serve the Premier League, is it not? It's there to serve the fans.
Well, we've said this before about bad VAR decisions that they seem to, you know, especially the Howard Webb and Michael Owen laughter hour, as we like to call it, seems to kind of support the referees rather than bring the game into question, if you know what I mean. Yeah. That was badly worded, but and again, like you said, yes, the Premier League are paid a lot of money by Sky, probably wanting to do each other a favour. But the fact that it was kind of just glossed over, it is a talking point. It is something that needs talking about. You can talk about it in a straight down the middle, apolitical manner. You can say, this has happened. They're annoyed about it. Some say this, some say that. This is what's happening. You can't just be like, oh, look how lovely that pitch is on a cold November in Merseyside.
How's the pitches in Manchester, the blue side of Manchester, and West London? How are they looking at this time of year? Oh, they're looking splendid. Nothing wrong there. Anyway, Garnacho, 2.5 minutes into the game. How the bollocks has he done that? It's a goal, never mind of the season. It's an all-time Premier League. It's an all-time Barclays classic. Underneath the floodlights.
Better than Rooney's from a technical standpoint because he hit it clean as a whistle. Even Sean, she's not really a football fan. She saw it and she went, "Oh, bloody hell!" And I was like, "I know." I was like, "It was an absolute peach." I did feel bad for Everton though because it didn't fully take the wind out of the sails, but it did put a dent in them. My nephew afterwards was posting memes just like, Yeah, it was good. I don't care, but it was good, but I don't care. You know, that kind of attitude to it. I think they all did have to kind of look at it and say that was an all-timer. But
could you imagine being a fan in that ground though? Like the first 2 minutes, like death to the Premier League. This is unjust. I hate it. Fair play. That's a pretty decent strike, that.
That's better than Tony Yeboah.
But I tell you what, I think the thing that sets it apart from Rooney's ever so slightly, if you look at the work he has to do while the ball's in the air to get in position to get that shot away, I don't understand how he got there. He's only a little man.
Yeah. He leapt like a salmon, Ross, like a salmon. The old cliches of the vision, the fact that he kind of backed himself to do that, because that's what... Again, Sean was saying, she was like, what goes through a footballer's head to attempt that? And you just knowing yourself, knowing your limits, and also I think seeing the headlines as well. I think he did see it, but you know what? I'm going to go for it. But he'll be dining off that for the rest of his career, and you can't blame him. That was beautiful.
It was beautiful. But yeah, I do wonder what would happen if a goalkeeper with regular-sized arms was in nets for that one, because Pickford, he got close to it, but I reckon if that was any other goalkeeper in the league, they might have saved it.
Yeah, without having to dive, probably just stand and just reach to one side.
He nearly got there, but not quite, the little T-Rex arms prick. Anyway, Onana in the other goal had a very good game for Manchester United. I thought there was the one from Garner Gay in the second half where he always gets a big palm to it, doesn't he, Onana? He never tips them away. It's always like a bosh. Even when it's flying in the top corner like that was from Idrissa Gana Gueye. Then we've got to speak about Mainu, I think you say his name. The young boy who played in central midfield for Manchester United, who looked unbelievable for 18 years of age to be put in a cauldron like Goodison Park.
An absolute pressure cooker environment it was, Ross. Yeah, it's because we've again said weeks upon weeks upon weeks that we don't understand United and that United need a bit more of a spine. But like you said, basically just based on this one appearance, if he can build on this promise and build on this performance, Man United might be all right. Yeah, because he was imperious, Ross, in that midfield.
Mercurial. His goal line clearance is one of the highlights of the game, apart from his passing and just general sort of calmness on the ball. He was very Lewis Miley-ish. Then we have Decore putting a great chance wide for Everton, who did have a lot of chance on the day, I thought, but again, a combination of Mino on the line, Onana having a decent game, Calvert-Lewin being a bit wasteful, but you can't be too harsh on him, can you? And then we get to the penalty decision where Young and Martial come together. I was shocked at how many pundits were saying it wasn't a pen. It looked like a pen to me.
Yeah, same to me as well. I didn't really have many problems with it. Again, like we've said already, it was soft, but in the context of the modern Premier League, it is a pen at the end of the day. But good on Bruno Fernandes. I never thought I'd ever say that.
Yeah, it's good captaincy that when your teammate's not knocking in the goals he was last season, so you put it on a plate in the form of a penalty, then he just goes and steps up and twats it in the top corner.
I did feel, though, that the scoreline, though, it's one of those where if you read it, United went to Goodison and won 3-0, you're like, they must have battered Everton. I do think it kind of flatters United because Everton were, like you said, wasteful. United marshalled well, but it
marshalled well? Who scored the third?
didn't even mean that, but it feels like a harsh result at the same time, if you know what I mean.
It wasn't a 3-0 game.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, so Tony Martial gets the third, going through the middle, dinking it over Jordan Pickford. Lovely finish, but yeah, as you say, Everton were... I think if you're an Everton fan, I know you've just been twatted 3-0 at home by a team who's, people say they're in and out in form, but they're still sixth in the league. They're still doing okay, despite how bad it feels like they're doing this season. And the fact you've been handed a 10-point deduction, I'd still be pretty fine with where you are currently. I know it's not looking good because of results elsewhere. Over the weekend, it's looking a bit worse than it did before the weekend's games kicked off. But I'd still be I'd still be very confident you'd survive relegation.
Yeah, like Everton didn't shrink at all. And it was like we were saying at the beginning of the season before they went on that little run. They do everything right, but score sometimes. And when they were going on that form, when Calvert-Lewin came back, they were finishing the dinner, they were getting the results. And again, it's one of those, they did everything right but score, which sounds stupid and sounds like a football cliche, but it is true. They didn't have a bad game, just Man United, a bit more luck, a wonder goal, and just better drilled.
Yeah, and it's not the first time we've said that about Everton this season, is it? They are doing all right under Sean Dyche. Brentford 0, Arsenal 1. Arsenal now return to the top of the league because of that result at the Etihad Stadium. As you said earlier on, it is now Arsenal 30, City 29, Liverpool and Villa 28, and Spurs 26 at the top of the table. This is the sort of game that, let's bring out the cliche book once again, this is the sort of game that is the earmark of champions. They're not playing too well, but they've won when it matters. 1-0, 89th minute goal. Mark Flappen, as we like to call him on the podcast because he can't catch a cold. He has the ball put through his legs very deftly by Kai Havertz in the 89th minute, as I said there. A deep cross from Saka. A wonderful finish, I thought, from Havertz. I think he meant to do that, put it through the keeper's legs when he was sort of advancing towards that far post. But Arsenal, they held on a little bit. Neil Maupay had a couple of good chances, especially the one where Zinchenko cleared it off the line where it didn't look like Ramsdale was getting there behind him. Arsenal just sort of... It didn't feel like they really got going until Trossard had that disallowed goal, which... I read sometime over the past 2 weeks about the Wenger rule, which apparently is being mooted about UEFA and whatever governing bodies have stuff to do with anything. It's basically, let's just say, defender is this pen, and if the striker is my finger, this is no use for people listening on Spotify, but if there needs to be daylight between them for it to be offside. Like, for example, where on Trossard's disallowed goal, his toe was offside. That's not enough offside for it to be offside. In the Wenger rule, you literally have to have your entire full body and daylight in front of the last defender. And I'm on board with that now, because to watch this goal here disallowed when his toe was offside, he scores with his head, he's sort of in line with Jesus when Jesus has the initial effort. I want the Wenger rule.
You want the Wenger bus to come, do you?
Does that not sound like a more, utopia football landscape with the Wenger rule where, an offside is literally the same for every single thing? It's not a toenail, it's not a fingernail, it's daylight between one body and another.
we say that, but as Northern English men who love a moan, we'll still find ways to complain about it, but... It does need to be more of a binary, because I've said this, like with the goal line technology, even though it's literally cost Liverpool leagues, it's either over the line or it's not. All of it has to be over the line, otherwise it's not a goal. And I'm fine with that, because if you've got a yes-no situation, you can't argue against it. But when you're saying this, it's like, his arm was offside, but he wasn't showing intent with that half of his body, so therefore he's onside, because take the conversation out of it and just have a yes-no decision.
That's what the Wenger rule is, Jack.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But I know for a fact that, the grass is always greener. And if it gets implemented, we'll still find ways where we're just like, this isn't working. We need to go back to how it was.
I just think it takes all the sort of the debate out of it, all the dispute. If it's just you're offside or you're not, it's just your whole body has to be offside. No, I'm trying to think of a children's nursery rhyme now, and I've just butchered that completely. You're all in, you're all out, you're sick, whatever.
The hokey cokey.
The hokey the hokey cokey.
And if that did come back, I mean, it's not surprising considering that Wenger was a big fan of the offside trap when he was Arsenal manager as well. So He's probably just thinking that. He's like, remember those glory days when you could do that properly? Oh, we need to bring that back.
Yeah, up the Wenger rule anyway, in my opinion. But Aaron Ramsdale, I guess we've got to talk about him. There was that bit in the first half where he got, there was doing a goal kick routine, a fancy one with short passes with the centre halves, and he just forgets to kick the ball. Rice luckily was on the line to block the attempt from Mbuemo to save his blushes. The old cliche book once again. But I feel really sorry for Ramsdale. I really do.
Was it revealed how come he was back in the side after being kind of cast out?
Because Reyes on loan, isn't he?
Has he gone out on loan?
No, he signed for Arsenal on loan.
Yes,
a loan with an obligation to buy.
Yes, of course. That was just me being thick there for a second. 'Cause, again, coming up to speed, leave me alone. Understandably looking shaky though. If he's got this riding on it, he's trying to win back his spot. At the end of the day, like you said, not the best game. Declan Rice definitely spared him some blushes, but he comes away with a clean sheet away from home.
Yeah, he did make a couple of decent saves, but it wasn't the busiest day. But when he was called upon, that big moment especially, he did look shaky. But I fully understand it. He got dropped for nothing. Reyes made more mistakes this season than Ramsdale and kept his place. It's bollocks.
Do you think he's going to walk straight back into the starting 11 as well? I think?
Oh yeah, David Raya will. I think Ramsdale leave in January just with the Euros. Even though he's got no chance of getting T-Rex out the team, he's going to leave, I reckon, and just try and get in there. I don't know where he'd go.
Wait.
I saw Wolves were apparently linked with him, which I think is maybe I don't want to be disrespectful, but it feels like a bit too much of a step down. Even though it's mid-table Premier League, it's fine.
It's one of those, isn't it? Because, I was just trying to go through everyone in my head and wasn't sure. But when you go in down the pecking order, I think Wolves is the next logical step.
Yeah, why not? At least you get minutes, money. At least you get minutes and prove what a great guy he is who concentrates for all 90 minutes. I still can't believe he said that. Anyway, next up we've got Newcastle 4, Chelsea 1. Newcastle hadn't lost a 3 p.m. kickoff since Eddie Howe took over. Willock was the latest injury, meaning that Newcastle had 12 unavailable. I was expecting nothing from the game, and then Lewis Miley, remember the name? He's 17 years old. He broke into the first team away at Chelsea in the last game of last season. He's missed a large part of this season due to glandular fever, because apparently that's a thing 17-year-olds who play for Newcastle get now. But he was very Michael Carrick-like on a day where he's playing against Enzo Fernandez, who cost a pretty penny. He absolutely schooled him, and that's not me being biased. You ask anyone who saw that game, he absolutely schooled him. And his calmness, that was him personified, setting up Isak for the first goal, who lifted it up and past the advancing Sanchez.
It was a beautiful ball. Like you said, the composure on the lad. Took out 2 or 3 maybe with that ball. It was almost like a close quarters Andrea Pirlo. Let's say it that way.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go. He's better than Pirlo.
Words of Ross Tweddell, not Jack Atkins. The fact that he played the full match last night as well. I know, obviously, it's again another old cliche of football. You've got to take your opportunities. If he's gotten through into this first 11 because other players are injured, then fair play to him. He sees the opportunity. I hope that Eddie Howe manages him well, because obviously, if you've got an injury crisis, the temptation's there to just play him until his legs fall off. Thinking, he's 17, he's got over glandular fever, he's hard. He could have 2 minutes sleep a night and be fine. But
what about when he's 23? That's when it'll bite us on the arse when he's 23 and he's absolutely knackered. But Neymar's the big example, isn't it? Playing that much football when you're that young. Michael Owen as well, I guess, we'll throw it in there, even though he's a arse. Even he last night was saying Newcastle were hard done by. Newcastle fans agree with Michael Owen for the first time ever.
I mean, the sky is falling. Dags, like I'm in Snatch. I was going to say dogs and cats living together in harmony, but
I've just realised. Do you reckon that's why Pep has never fully committed to Foden, just to save his legs?
Potentially, yeah.
He's managed his career very well so far.
Bald bastard. Well, that's coming from me. One of 3 bald men in the world: Pep Guardiola and Casey Kelly.
But maybe that's what he's been doing. He's looked at the likes of Michael Owen and Neymar and thought, hey, this lad's special. Let's not ruin his career when he gets past 27.
I can't believe we've not considered that until now when talking about Miley for Newcastle.
Oh, hey, Eddie Howe hasn't got much of a choice at the moment, but back to that game on Saturday. Hell of a free kick from Raheem Sterling makes it 1-1. Nick Pope didn't move, and deservedly so. Knuckleball, dipper. Whoa, it's like being at Blackpool.
It was like a flyaway or penny floaters, as other people call them. Just the way it arced and oh, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Do you call it a flyaway?
I call it a flyaway.
Oh, it's a penny floater up here, like.
Yeah.
Oh, let us know in the comments what you call a corner shop, very plastic, very light football.
A super telly was the brand choice around there.
The ones that arrive in a fishing net for some reason and are hung up on a door.
And when you absolutely smack it, it just starts juttering in the air like a jabalani.
Joelinton back to the game. He should not be allowed to head the ball at the far post ever again. He missed a sitter away at Borussia Dortmund, and he missed an even worse one here. This came at a time when Chelsea were on top. Enzo Fernandez brings out a nice save from Pope at his near post, where he sort of going the other way and has to dart back to save at his near post. And then, I just don't understand it. Newcastle just blew Chelsea away in the second half. Lascelles put Newcastle ahead with an unchallenged header after nice work. We had a free kick sort of wide on the right, a bit like sort of towards the halfway line. Worked it across the pitch. Ball in from Gordon, I think it was, and he gets a free header. Don't understand it.
It was training ground stuff. And this was not too long after Trippier had absolutely twatted the bar as well.
Yeah.
All over them. I want to give, I know we'll talk about him more in a minute, but Anthony Gordon is really growing in this Newcastle side. It seems to be over a week that I'm saying that I'm shocked at how much he's kicking on, because I thought that Everton had pulled your pants down when you signed him, but he's starting to look like the real deal.
As I said earlier in the podcast, history. I don't know what I've said that like that for, but there we go. Last season, clearly not fit, clearly not up to what Eddie Howe wants from his team. This season, the amount of running he does every single game. Last night against Paris, he was absolutely cream-crackered when it came to like the 70th minute. You can just see it, and you can't blame him. The big fear there is, obviously, he's having to play as many minutes as he is because we haven't got anybody else. Is a big injury coming around the corner just because the sheer miles and effort that he puts in every single game. That's the big worry, because he doesn't stop. He's amazing. I can't believe I'm saying this after what we saw last season from the guy. Because remember when he went off at Brentford, when he wasn't having a good season and Eddie Howe took him off and he chucked down his top and he looked a bit petulant, and we're like, oh God, we've signed a whopper here. Normally we don't do that under this new regime at Newcastle. Normally they're just solid lads. But this guy looks like a whopper. But no, a pre-season later, and he's been our best player this season. Like.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. Like I said, as we'll come on into a minute, if you want to continue your wonderful play-by-play. Right?
Go on then. Then just a minute after that goal from Lascelles, Joelinton robs Thiago Silva to twat it in from about 8 yards. I like to think that he went, ah! And then kicked it as hard as he could. 8 yards from goal. It was a fantastic finish.
Let's focus on that again. Joelinton mugged Thiago Silva. Again, would have said that 2 years. You'd be like, come on, don't talk absolute nonsense. But he had his pants down, didn't he?
Big time. It wasn't the first. Thiago Silva didn't have the best game. There was a bit in the first half where Gordon was closing him down. I don't know if this made the match of the day highlights, but it was a highlight being there in the stadium. And he sort of like, Gordon's closed him down towards the corner flag, and Thiago Silva's just trying to like knock out his feet and then maybe play it down the line. But I don't know what he did. He played it off one leg to the other. He falls on his arse, and then Gordon goes, just laughs at him, pointing the finger.
Did you get to Punks before the game?
No, I didn't. It was a bit early. Yeah, I didn't fancy a pizza. Didn't have any pre-match meal this time, just a liquid lunch.
A hot cup of Bovril. Lovely.
A couple of G&Ts. But yeah, Thiago Silva didn't have the best game. But yeah, Joelinton, again, he's gone and played away for Brazil. But apparently the goalkeepers are the one who's tired.
Well, that's what our own players said. I'm not... That's what they said.
Are you calling Joelinton a drugs cheat? The cocaine's making him get through these games like he is?
They're the words, again, of Ross Tweddell and not Jack Atkins.
Aye, but it is amazing to see what him and Bruno do when they've travelled so far. Because we've got Miggy Almer on as well, and I think you can tell more with Miggy when he's been away to when he hasn't been away. But whereas with Bruno and Joelinton, maybe that's an unfair statement. It probably is. I'm going to move on. Reece James then got sent off for a second yellow card, which was funny because Tino Livramento, who again had a very decent game on Saturday before his unbelievable game against PSG last night, he was forced to leave Chelsea, and everyone seems to accept the fact it was merely because they had a choice of Reece James or Tino, and they picked Reece James, and so Tino had to go to Southampton. And now he's come back, and he looks... It's a harsh thing to say, because Reece James's injury record is heartbreaking. He gets going, he's an unbelievable player, and he just gets an injury that sets him back. But Tino's looking a bit better currently as we're sat here on the 29th of November.
Definitely. Is it too early to say that like Reece James be like the 2020s Ledley King?
Maybe so. I mean, how old is Reece James? Let me quickly Google that. Fill the airtime with some words, Jack Atkins.
So, for those who don't remember Tottenham legend Ledley King, his injury record was that bad that it got to the point where he couldn't train, I'm sure, towards the end of his career because they were that afraid of him getting injured. But he was so good that they couldn't risk not playing him.
Yeah.
But how old is Reece James?
He's 24 on the 8th of December. So
I thought he was older than that.
Yeah, He's only 23 as we're sat here now. So it is... Again, management of the career. I don't know if it is just maybe he is injury prone. I don't know what's good. Let's have a look at his games season by season. The Wikipedia. So, right, 1920 season, 24 Premier League. Oh, no, we'll go all appearances at all competitions. So 37, 47, 39, 24, 7 this season so far. So it's not as bad as I thought it was because it always feels like he gets going. Then there's a big injury, but then again, 37, 47, 39 over the 3 seasons between 2019 and 2022.
But again, the only thing there is as well, it doesn't say how many of those were full 90s.
You've been down this road before. Very good point. Well made. But yeah, he gets sent off for a second yellow card, which was deservedly so. It was just 2 yellow cards. And then, yeah, we blew him away a little bit more because Gordon going down the left, doing what St. Maximin would never do, just cutting inside and shooting.
Yeah, it's because I watched this. I watched this on the highlights, and when I saw the scoreline, everyone was talking about Reece James. I thought, oh, in my head, I was like, what's happened here? It was probably a KG 1-1. Reece James has got sent off, and then Newcastle have spaffed him. But in fact, it was quite the opposite.
Yeah, it was 3-1 by the time Reece James got sent off. And yeah, that was a bit unfair of me to say that about Maximin. He did cut inside a couple of times and score a couple of goals, but Gordon does it a bit more frequently. Well, to be fair, Gordon, he's like Keith Gillespie, but on the left. He always jinks out wide and then gets a ball in from the byline. It's a throwback. It's lovely.
So we've got Reece James as the new Ledley King and Andy Gordon's the new Keith Gillespie,
but on the left and without the issues,
left, of course,
and without the issues off the pitch.
What was the atmosphere like then inside St. James? Because obviously you've been a bit up and down recently because obviously the fortunes of the injury record and what's happened to Tonali. But was everyone just kind of like, oh, let's see how we get on? Or was everyone up for it?
No, it's really bad. It's not really bad, but it's noticeably worse compared to last season. And it's just down to the membership ballot thing they've got going on, I think. Obviously, there's a thing to be said about season ticket holders making noise because they are there every week and it doesn't seem to get any better or any worse. There's 34,000 season tickets inside St. James's Park, I think, so they've got something to answer for. But it just, the difference between last season and this, it is noticeable. It's so noticeable that Murdad, Amanda Staveley's husband and one of the co-owners of the club, or I'm thinking of the pie chart. Shareholders, is that the right way to put it? Yeah. He went on Twitter and was like, yeah, it needs to be louder inside the stadium. To which some fans went, you can't say that, man. That's bang out of order. And then you go on their Twitter account and every single weekend it's like, hey, the atmosphere in St. James's Park isn't what it used to be last season, like. So he was well in with his rights to say what he said. But again, I think the clubs, that they are responsible for the atmosphere being the way it is, because as I was saying last night in the live stream, we had to work last season to get a ticket to the game. Being a member, you had to log on at 7 a.m, leave the window open, so when at 10 a.m. when the thing went live, the ballot thing, not the ballot, the shop would open online. You were there with a prime position in the queue to get yourself a ticket, and then when you got there, you felt like you worked for it and you made the most of the day. Now the membership ballot's open for 3 or 4 days. I forget how long it is open for, so you could just be on your emails one day and go, oh, that ballot's open for another 20 minutes. I'll just you never know, I might get a ticket. And then you get it. I guess it's what you get when you become a bit more successful. This corporate bollocks getting in the way of the real nuts and bolts.
But when in terms of like building up the atmosphere and getting to the next level, what do you think you're going to do? Are you going to do a plastic flags kind of Chelsea City thing? Are you going to do those big tubey things that Leicester had? What's the solution?
I think the solution, quite simply, is singing sections. where you are obliged to sing. Put one right next to the away fans, where we used to get our tickets last season. It was always loud in there anyway, but I think a designated, sorry, not a dignified, it's anything but dignified, a designated singing section, that would make a big difference, because we do have one sort of strawberry corner, I think is the unofficial designated singing section, but we need some more. It's just, I wish they would get rid of the memberships. I know why they're doing it, because they cost £37 for one season. Apparently they've sold over 100,000 of them. So every single membership ballot, there's 100,000 people potentially in the running for a ticket. But having people who really want to be in the stadium makes a hell of a difference. And we've learned that this season. So I just, even though it makes no sense commercially for the club, just get rid of that 100,000 times £37 that you made in the summer.
But you're forgetting that it's not for fans anymore, Ross. It's for customers.
Yeah, day trippers, and then more and more are coming to St James's Park. Anyway, good win, so it was. Unexpected. Also unexpected was Luton Town 2, Crystal Palace 1, was it? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a weird season, I think, for Palace so far, because I don't know if I'm just still stuck in that loop of when they had, when they had Zaha leading the front line for, it seemed like 25 years, that you're just like, oh, Palace are quite tasty. I think they'll really kick on this season. And then they kind of flatter to deceive. I'm getting that again from them. I'm getting just kind of shades of just like, I don't know, they're too good to really go into free fall, but they're not good enough to break into the top. They are just that middle team now, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's but when he took charge last season, he seemed to be 74 and carefree. The attacking football was off the scale. I remember watching the game they played away at Leeds towards the end of last season, just after he took over. And the football was like watching 2011 Barcelona. It was unbelievable. And then this season, he seems to have gone back to old Hudson. We need to be very, very disciplined. I feel terrible for doing that. But there we go. Need to be very disciplined, have a good shape and all that sort of stuff. And it's really stifling the attacking end of the pitch that he was milking last season. He was milking it. It was spunking everywhere, Jack Atkins.
Oh, great. Now I've got a mental image that I really, could have gone my whole life without, but...
Anyway, Edouard with the correctly ruled out goal for handball following Kaminsky's save. It sort of rebounded off the keeper and he went, whoa! In one motion.
It was a beautiful handball. It was like a crest of a wave as he just swept it into his own path.
And it wasn't obvious either, so they did give it the right decision at the end of the day, but if they got away with it, fair play. It was a smart finish for a centre-back from Mengi that put Luton 1-0 up. He was not good enough on my EA FC 2-4 career mode. He's been shipped out and replaced by Christopher Ayer from Brentford, who is the wall. He's unbelievable. We've got Hato in, who I think plays for PSV in real life. I can't quite remember, but I signed him from Tottenham reserves. What a guy. But yeah, he puts, it's a smart finish, a nice little toe poke kind of thing in the bottom corner.
Yeah, because it looked, at first glance, it looked scruffy because there was a bit of a goalmouth scramble. But like you said, was it his first professional career goal or just his first goal for the team?
First professional career goal.
Like you said, fantastic finish. But like, yeah, on first glance, I was like, oh, that's a bit scruffy there. He's kind of bundled it in. And then on closer to actually, it's like, oh, no, actually, fair play to the lad.
And then in a pre-Garnacho world, we had what was a goal of the season contender from Michael Olise. He picks the ball up on the right, sort of just inside the Luton half, I think it was. A little Swazi turn. He's down the right wing. He cuts inside, and it's a massive bender into the far corner. I was trying to do that like Jeff Stelling, but it didn't work. I used to love that with Jeff Stelling when he just like, oh, Jack Atkins with a hell of a strike. He would put on his voice like that.
They'll be dancing on the streets of Total Network Solutions tonight.
It's the good doctor, Kenny Juka, with the goal for Gretna. Those were the days, the good doctor, Kenny Juka. Wonder what he's up to these days. Anyway, it was a hell of a goal. It's a shame because of the way Match of the Day do their goal of the season competition at the end. They take the best goal from every month, and he's not winning Novembers. We all know who will win Novembers.
Yeah, he's not even won goal of the weekend, has he? It is going to be one of those that is completely forgotten about, but again, for the old cliche, a beautiful solo goal. He just had everyone on their arse, and... yeah, I feel really bad. Even though he scored an absolute perler, I somehow feel bad for this very rich athlete.
Well, he's battled his injuries this season, hasn't he? So he's come back and done that. I think there was the move to Chelsea in the summer that didn't materialise because Steve Parish was like, no! In the words of Jeff Stelling, you're staying here! But yeah, then Jacob Brown, who was Mr. FA Cup for my Hats career mode, he was unreal in the FA Cup. The journey to the final in the 2023-24 campaign. Jacob Brown scored lots of goals for me, and he gets there to poke home the winner after some, open the cliche book, pedestrian defending from Anderson, and in that corridor of uncertainty, which is called that because when a ball's put in there like that, it makes people uncertain of what they're doing, and that's exactly what happened there.
The corridor of uncertainty sounds like a Phil Collins B-side. I'm quite into that. But yeah, he should have. Anderson should have done so much better for it. But like you said, if that uncertainty's in the back of his mind, then you've got to take your hats off to Brown for actually exploiting the space, exploiting the move, and making the correct decision. Yeah.
And then we had Jefferson Lerma hitting the Denver bar towards the end of the game, but Luton get their second win of the season, their first ever Premier League home win. Of course, they were relegated the season before football began in 1992. Anything before that wasn't even football. It was called ball foot, and balls just kicked human feet around the pitch. It was a completely different game.
Yeah, you had Alan Ball, you had Bobby Ball, you had Zoe Ball, you had the Leica balls, and they just kicked feet around. Yeah, that's how I remember it.
Exactly what happened before 1992. Sky Sports changed everything with the Premier League. After the weekend, they're now 4 points clear of the bottom three, which looks nice and rosy for them, even though I'd still be confident if I was the Ev that you could catch them.
Oh yeah, definitely. But like you said, it's all about momentum. That I think it's going to be a little while before we see Everton either regain those 10 points. Not in terms of like Everton playing bad. I just think that it's such a weight on the shoulders, isn't it? And like you said, they played well against United, but still got, 3 put past them. Who's to say?
Who's to say? We might as well touch on the big VAR bollocks from Monday Night Football because, as I say, every single game apart from the heavyweight clash of the weekend had a massive headline to it. Wolves have been FUCKED again. A few weeks ago we had that call at Luton that I spoke about earlier with the deflection onto the hand. And then we had the Man United game at the start of the season, the Newcastle penalty decision as well. And now, apparently, this one where it was Kearney getting fouled by Semedo, Gary O'Neill revealed after the game the referee for the game watched it back with him and admitted he should have been sent to the VAR screen to have a look at it. And that'll make everything better for Gary O'Neill.
Don't worry, though, because he'll have gotten, yet another apology phone call from Howard Webb, and that will make it all better. Terrible. Absolutely terrible shout.
This is what I mean, though, that for calls like this, the subject, I'm sure Gary Neal could live with one human getting it wrong, but 3 have got it wrong here, at least 3, maybe 4. So you can't live with that. It's just, it needs to be changed for fouls. I can fully accept it being there for offsides. Goal line technology, absolutely fine, but this is another example, like the Man United one at the start of the season, like the Newcastle penalty they didn't get as well. It's all subjective, and all VAR does is muddy the waters because one man's subjectivity is put against another man's, and the strongest wins. I don't know.
And let's not forget about the soft headbutt as well.
Oh God! To be fair, if Kilman, do you reckon it was the cell from Kilman that
it was? He kind of took it and then just went, "Oh, he's headbutted me there."
Fair play, more players should be like that. But yeah, it's a shame how much is happening to Wolves because he was saying like it's cost us 6 or 8 points this season, something like that, which is the difference in his reputation. Wolves going up the league, who knows? And towards the end of the season, if they do have a bad run of form, that's there just on merit rather than them getting shafted by the referees. That'll cost him his job, and he'll look back at this period of time thinking, oh, what about the 6 to 8 points that would have had more better off?
This is one of those things where you hope that chairman and people on boards of football teams kind of look at the facts, because I do think that, especially with teams in the lower half of the table, boards can get sack happy. And like you're saying, if Wolves do go into a bad run of form, you'd hope they'd look at it and be like, hang on, no, we've been buggered here by the league a few times because of terrible decisions. But yeah, it was just poor officiating again. I'm sick of talking about it.
I can't believe they went and had a look with Gary O'Neill. It's unbelievable. I don't get what purpose does that serve after the game for the referee to go and watch and go, oh God, we've made a right mess of it there.
Yeah, there's a curly whirly. Sorry about that. I wonder who initiated that. That's what I want to know.
Surely it's got to be Gary O'Neill. Yeah.
Do you reckon he was waiting for them with just like a little bit of wood in his hand, smacking it against his fist? Just like, let's go have a look at that then, soft bollocks. Let's go.
I'm just trying to picture Cockney smooth man Gary O'Neill with his little comb over acting like that, and I can't do it. Sorry, I've just got a message. I'm trying to sell something on Facebook Marketplace and the lady can't come and collect it. Let me know when best suits for you. Sorry, I'm just doing some admin live on the podcast, but, she's meant to be here at like 11:30, so I was going to just, there we go. Anyway, other football headlines from this week. Terry Venables, got to touch on that. He passes away at the age of 80 after a long illness, I should say. He's one of... I don't know who else to group him with, but he's just one of those football men from your youth where he was football. El Tel. He was... For his playing career, I didn't realise how good of a player he was. 2 England caps as a player, but he had a distinguished career with the likes of QPR, Chelsea and Tottenham. Then his managerial career kicked off with the likes of Crystal Palace and QPR, and it's well worth a listen. The Rest is Football, the Micah Richards, Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer podcast. They did like a little half-hour tribute episode to Terry Venables, because obviously Gary Lineker played under him at Barcelona and at Tottenham, and Alan Shearer for England, and just the stories they had about the guy and just how much they put over how innovative he was back in the day, back in the 80s, where he would do things like Gary Lineker was telling the story, I think it was when he was Barcelona manager, and apparently just would train him one day and he goes, what do you reckon would happen if we just left 3 defenders in the box for a corner where defending and we pushed everybody else up? And then Gary Lineker was like, well, surely that would be just suicide. They'd just have more players in the box. But he was like, what would they do? What would the other team do? Would they push everybody back, or would they keep everybody forward? And Gary Lineker was like, yeah, that's a good point. No one's ever thought that before, have they?
He was... Yeah, it's always a surprising one, because my first memories, pretty much my only memories of my, football life were of Venables at Euro 96, and then obviously he went to the Socceroos afterwards, didn't he? He took charge of Australia because there was a famous Oasis drink advert. Do you remember that, or are you too young?
It rings a bell. Who was it involved again?
It's Terry Venables, and he's in Australia watching lads not being able to play football, and he has a Oasis, and in his mind he's back in Wembley. Yeah, but there's a really good documentary a couple of years ago the BT Sport put out called Team of the 80s, and it was about Terry Venables transforming Crystal Palace. Really, really good. If you can seek it out, it'll probably be on the BT Sport website somewhere, or TNT Sport, or whatever you want to call it now. But Team of the 80s, very good.
Yeah, and team of the 90s for the England perspective, I guess. Euro 96 got to talk about there. It was the style he brought the England team after the Graham Taylor yes, which is, I don't know how do we compare that to a modern day managerial switch? It is literally like Steve Bruce to Eddie Howe, but with a bit less pragmatism from Terry Venables' side. It was beautiful, sexy football.
Even aside from the football, you just got, just kind of like schlubby Graham Taylor in a polo shirt and a pair of tracky pants, and then you got Terry Venables turn up in a lovely grey suit, and you're like, hey, he's the business, him. I'd buy a used car from Terry Venables. Never mind this sexy football.
Do I not like that? But yeah, just the Christmas tree formation, everybody he got the best out of Gaza. It was an unbelievable summer where obviously England get to the semi-finals, and then Gareth gets himself a Pizza Hut advert out of the semi-final penalty miss. Congratulations to him for that still all these years later. But yeah, it was a shame that you had to go after Euro 96. I can't quite remember what the circumstances were that made Glenn Hoddle take over, but it felt like he was ahead of his time, Terry Venables. And as I say, he was just one of those... I can just picture him and Des Lynam for some reason. And maybe Bobby Robson's there as well. Peter Reid maybe there, just having a beer. Reid.
Yeah. Martin O'Neill turns up for one and then decides he's got a better place to be in the Saxon. I don't like Martin O'Neill.
Rest in peace, Terry Venables, though. Big L Tel.
Rest in peace, Terry Venables, of course. El Tel.
One of the legends of the game. Right, we'll go over to some bollocks from IFAB, the International Football Association Board, who have approved plans to trial the use of sin bins at the elite level of the soccer. The use of sin bins, where a player will temporarily leave the pitch for a set amount of time, is able to return to action. Is later able to return to action. Of course, that's how sin bins. Ross, work you tit. Ross, work you tit. I've gone mad, Jackins. I can't talk anymore. It is proven to be effective at grassroots and youth levels, apparently. I don't know where that's been used before. I've never seen that used before, ever. Have you? Save me.
No, not in football, no. But just the fact that you said you can't talk anymore, I was just thinking of Cliff Richard again.
But in a meeting on Tuesday, IFAB threw their support behind the recommendations to trial the sin bin punishments at the sport's highest level for dissent, as well as cynical and tactical fouls. And the big example people have been jumping on after this was announced was the Chiellini on Saka pulling his shirt round his neck thing from the Euros final a couple of years ago. Such offence is currently deemed worthy of a proverbial and theoretical orange card, a transgression which deserves disciplinary action between the standard yellow card and red card. This is going to be fantastic. The subjectivity of the referee on the pitch, and then the assistant VAR, and then the VAR himself. It's going to be a right mess. IFAB will now begin drawing up regulations to fit the introduction of sin bins, and they could be implemented at Premier League level by the start of 2024-2025. I don't want this at all.
I don't want this either. It works in other sports, but other sports have different rules. That's the cut and thrust of it, really. But like you were saying, the fact that they've said here for cynical and tactical fouls, but there's not a binary there, as we were saying before with the VAR thing. It's like what becomes cynical, and obviously the pessimist in me thinks some teams will use this to their advantage. Maybe once they find out what the level is, we might get more, not simulation, but some more of the dark arts, getting people sin binned for like a quick 5-minute advantage or something like that. I don't think it's going to work.
It just feels like something we don't need. I like the idea of, I don't know what the right word to use is, a heavenly bin for concussion protocol. Where a player is taken off for 10 minutes to go through proper concussion testing. I think that's the only bit where a sin bin type scenario works in football, but this just seems like it's going to cause more VAR discussion that we need, and we've already got too much of that, so I'm fully against this idea. I hope it doesn't happen, but it looks like it's going to be in the Premier League next season, which I can't wait for.
Yeah. I mean, my beard's going very grey already, but I think if the sin bin idea comes in and VAR isn't properly changed, then I'm going to look like a bald Father Christmas before you know it.
Yeah, you need to grow the old skullet in to get the full Santa Claus look going. You've got a bit of shadow on top of your head there, by the way.
Yeah, I've still got like a hairline. I jumped before I was pushed because it was starting to go, and I could see that Shearer's Island was creeping in. So I thought, I don't want to be one of these people with just like really bushy at the side and 3 on the top, being like, no, it's still fine, just let me glue it down. I was like, can't be arsed, shave it off.
That's Cole Palmer in a couple of years' time. He's getting that way. That's the thing I noticed the weekend there. It's just looking from the start of the pitch, you can see how hard he's had to comb that forward because it's all receding. Just get rid, Cole. You'll be liberated. I believe in you. The Football Association. It's been a quiet week for news, believe it or not. The Football Association have confirmed they will investigate Tottenham Hotspur's sale of Jermaine Defoe to Portsmouth in 2008. We just missed. Well, we didn't miss it last week. We had a pre-record episode last week, but it came out on Thursday, so we would have just missed it if we had a normal Hold and Give football podcast. Defoe enjoyed 4 years at Tottenham before leaving for Portsmouth for $7.5 million in January 2008, earning himself a switch back to White Hart Lane 12 months later after bagging 16 goals in 31 Premier League games. Now, after a big expose piece by The Times and Matt Lawton, I believe it is, an unlicensed agent by the name of Mitchell Thomas was used to help with negotiations, while Spurs chairman Daniel Levy also failed to agree the representation contract with another agent who received £1 million for his involvement in the sale, which are both breaches of FA rules. A panel investigating potential issues with the transfer concluded that in January 2010 that Thomas helped Defoe to secure the terms of his Portsmouth contract, despite Defoe's claims that he negotiated the contract himself, but the FA declined to pursue disciplinary action against Spurs when presented with the evidence at the time. I saw a little bit with Sky Andrews, I believe his name is, the football agent on TalkSport, who I think was Defoe's actual agent at the time, and he was like, yes, this guy should not have been involved in the deal, but he was involved in the deal. And I think they also said when Harry Redknapp was asked about it, don't call me a dodgy dealer. He was just like, I can't remember. He vengered it.
Oh, yeah, of course. It seems convenient that this has come out now.
Yes.
Is the main thing that's hit me. I'm not saying that this shouldn't be investigated. I'm not saying that if there are serious wrongdoings that appropriate penalties shouldn't be doled out. But the fact that we're having this debate about the outstanding charges against City and Chelsea is like, oh, hang on, let's dredge this up from what? 2008, was it 15 years ago?
15 years ago. And it makes you wonder how many deals of this ilk were taking place back then and how far this could go. Could there be a case for the Premier League to cease to exist in a couple of years' time if every single dodgy dealing from a Premier League club was exposed? As I say, I know this isn't from the Premier League itself, it's a Times exclusive.
Yeah.
But there's a time and a place in there. I don't know why it's obviously you don't want to think the media and the Premier League are working hand in hand, but this doesn't half make you feel like the Premier League and the media are working hand in hand.
2 Quid says that within the next 2 weeks, someone's going to write an expose piece on Carlos Tevez and Javier Mascherano's transfer to West Ham. And we're going to get distracted once again.
Yes, we are. But yeah, as you say there, we need to get City and Chelsea dealt with before any more bollocks like this is going to muddy the waters. Yes, they might have broken rules. Yes, they should be punished if they have done. It is weird how in 2010 everyone knew about this, but the FA did nothing.
Yeah, it's always like the FA are a bit slack.
Yeah, toss. Yeah, let's get City and Chelsea sorted before we move on to anything else. But we move on from that bollocks to the highlight of the week on the Holding Gear Football podcast. I'm just going to go for the obvious one straight away. It's Garnacho's goal of the decade. What else do we need to say? We spoke about earlier on, in case you skipped that section of the podcast. Go back and listen to that bit, why don't you? Where two great football minds speaking about a great football goal. Some classic Barclays action.
Yeah, sometimes though, even though it's the obvious choice, it has to be said. I was trying not to pick anything Liverpool related this week, and my mind did flash to Garnacho because it was literally the second it left his booth, everyone just went, that's one of the best goals I've ever seen. And I hadn't even hit the back of the net yet, but it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. What's your highlight of the week?
Right. Forgive me, my Welsh brethren. As a proud boy of North Wales, somewhere down the line, myself, we do go to the 7th tier of Welsh football, and I'm going to try this. Great Rayland FC.
I would go CWRT Roland FC.
Yeah, but it's Welsh, isn't it? So it's probably good. Quite Rowland.
Quite Roland FC.
But they play in carefully anyway. Harry Short is the player. He scored what? As soon as I saw it, I went, every year when you watch the Puskas and the nominees, and it's like top 5 league, top 5 league, top 5 league, international, women's league, top 5 league, like 9th tier Dutch league filmed on a phone, top 5 league. And this is one of those 9th tier Dutch ones, but 7th tier Welsh. Harry Short scored a pitch perfect 40-yard volley from just inside the halfway line against AFC Penrhychaiba. But Penrhychaiba. But yeah, we said before about the audacity on Garnacho. Just this one, again, watching the clip, it's the second he strikes it, someone just going, ooh. It just flies through the air. When it ripples the back of the net, there's, they'll be partying on the streets of Kite Ryan.
So yeah, just to set the scene for you, a defender for the opposite team, I'm not going to try and pronounce the name again, I think he's received a short goal kick from the goalkeeper because the goalkeeper is sort of wide to the left-hand side of his goal if he's looking out the goal. The defender's sort of like at the byline on the left hand, back at his left back sort of area. He's just hoofed the ball forward, but right into the middle of the pitch. And Harry Short has met it It's the sidewinder. It's a picture-perfect volley, and he's put it in the far right side of the goal, which is where the keeper obviously isn't. It's not even hit the ground. It's nestled beautifully in the back of the net. It is one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Shades of a young Mark Hughes in terms of technique.
There's that volley he scored in training when he was Manchester City manager, where he does the sidewinder and his picture It is that. And maybe Harry Short's a descendant of Mark Hughes.
Another proud Welshman. I don't know if Harry Short's a proud Welshman, but he's playing for a proud Welsh team from Caerphilly that I'm not going to try and pronounce again because I'm sorry to my nan. That's all I'm saying. sorry, Nan. Sorry, Nan.
And we move on from the highlight of the week to the, Darren England and Daniel Cook Memorial. God, what's happening here? The Darren England and Daniel Cook Memorial Twat of the Week. Do you want to go first this time?
I will, and it's Bernardo Silva, Ross.
Oh, here we go.
No, it's not really.
What do you like, eh?
I've obviously this week I can predict what yours will be, so I've swerved it. There's not been too many twats outside of the referees, so I've gone for a light one, and it's. You must have seen Jill Scott's banter with Daniel Sturridge on League of Their Own.
He's rattled. Well, if you weren't just vibing, you might have won the league.
In the season where Daniel Sturridge scored 21 goals and assisted 20, and it was out of nowhere. And like I said, I'm just plucking. It's not that twatish from Jill Scott. It's more she's not been a twat. She's been made to look a twat because she said something out of not even out of context. She's just kind of plucked something out to fill dead air, and it's kind of fallen flat. But it's especially as I'm going to try and make it serious. The fact that we're talking about the mental health of players and how they have to deal with big loss and all that, it's not that deep.
No, it's not.
But if you haven't seen it, Daniel Sturridge was reminiscing about the I want to say 2013-14 season. Liverpool came very close and then obviously capitulated towards the end. Steven Gerrard fell over, and fans of small teams haven't stopped singing about it since. And he was just saying that he'll be vibing in his car. He'll hear a song that reminds him of the time. It takes him back and feels good. And he's like, yeah, and a vibe and thinking of those memories. And then Jill Scott, maybe if you hadn't been vibing, you'd have got it done, which doesn't make sense. And then you obviously got Mika Richards and all them going, ah, and. Again, it's not that bad, but it's been a thin week. I didn't want to talk about the refs, and that was the first thing that jumped to mind. Probably more twats of the week are the people who've gone. There's been some sexist vitriol about this on Twitter and X, because of course it's on Twitter and X because that's where a hive of scum and villainy. But just everyone who's not called Daniel Sturridge just looks a bit of a knobhead in it, really, I think.
I tell you what, I am shocked that former Manchester City player Jill Scott, who won the WSL Cup in 2014, 2016 and 2019, the WSL in 2016 and the FA Women's Cup in 2017, 2019 and 2020, would have a go at Daniel Sturridge for not winning a trophy.
Even though he's won 2 Champions Leagues. So
no, we're talking about this. We're talking about the 13-14 campaign where Liverpool pissed it away.
But even then, it wasn't the fault of Daniel Sturridge. He was involved with 40 goals.
It was a commentary on the entire team vibing at the time. Raheem Sterling was vibing. Suarez was biting.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not that deep. I was kind of scrabbling for something, but it was one where I saw it and thought, it just felt a bit mean. It just felt a bit mean. Daniel Sturridge is a lovely fella, especially now he's doing punditry wearing some outlandish designer gloves. Fantastic.
God, that Prada outfit at the weekend was something else, wasn't it? The
Sublime.
Turtleneck, thin, like t-shirty kind of material, but with Prada across his neck. Then he had like a waistcoat on, didn't he?
Of course he did. Superb. He's like a young Gibril Cisse in his fashion choices.
What they should do is just a compilation of Roy Keane seeing Daniel Sturridge for the first time on a weekend, just to see Roy Keane's reaction. I'd love to see Roy Keane's reaction to that outfit.
Did you see that Roy Keane did a campaign for Adidas Spezial recently? And I was thinking, imagine trying to do a fashion shoot with Roy Keane. He's like, no, I'm just going to wear the stuff and walk me dogs. And you can take photos if you like.
It's in his natural habitat where he wanks his dogs. I love that. I really do. Man is pictured walking his dog after World Cup dismissal back in 2002. Therefore, Newcastle fans take that as he wanks his dogs.
Roy Keane does wank dogs, allegedly. But Yeah, like I said, it's not that deep with Jill Scott, but I didn't want to talk about referees. Now to you, Ross. Who's your twat of the week?
Simon Marciniak, who is the referee who refereed the Champions League final last year, the World Cup final in 2022. He was the referee for PSG versus Newcastle last night as we're sat here recording. We did a big bet on this at the start of the podcast. I'm still not de-redded in the face after speaking about that. The fury is pulsating through my veins. So I'll leave it there and just tell you my twat of the week for bottling it at the crucial moment was Simon Marciniak.
For the sake of trying to produce more content, I agree with you fully, but I just had to have another pick.
That's how the segment works. Thank you. I've caved because just to peel the curtain back a bit, my original pick was Harry Short, so I went for Garnacho. His original pick was Simon, so he's gone for Jill Scott. We make it work here on the Holding It Football podcast. But now it's time for everyone's favourite segment. Welcome to Brighton and Hove Albion fullback Purvis Estepinian. What are you talking about? It's the segment where you send us your hot take about the professional football and we either pick it apart or agree with it. Now this week's submission comes from Little Pig Boy. On X, I didn't click on his account, I was scared to. He says, people who scoff at Brighton and Brentford's data-driven recruitment and point at the likes of Leicester and Southampton as examples of it conveniently omit or don't know these clubs failed because the systems they were using were changed. For instance, very few mentions are made of the fact that Brendan Rodgers disliked Leicester's approach and squeezed most of the data nerds out of the club to replace them with his own people. Obviously, Leicester went down, it bit him on the arse.
I agree with this. I do think there is a place for data-driven recruitment. Liverpool have used it in bits over the last few years when we've actually been good in the transfer dealings, whereas in other years when you're just going on scouts and how they give you the feel, we've fallen on our arse. Again, we had Brendan Rodgers for a few years. He signed us Fabio Borini, who I know our good friend Jack King loves him when he gets that dagger in his mouth, but
he scored one goal. He scored one goal, for God's sake. Pathetic.
Exactly. So no, I do think there is definitely a case for good data-driven recruitment. We tried to do it with the kind of Moneyball aspect that worked in baseball, but it's not quite worked to the same degrees that it has in football. But yeah, no, I agree with the Little Pig Boy.
I also agree with the Little Pig Boy. I think Brighton and Brentford and Leicester, up until a point, I mean, they were relatively successful before Rodgers. I know Rodgers initially took them to a different level. I say relatively successful. They won the Premier League, but I don't know if that was a data-driven Premier League win. It doesn't feel like it would be under Nigel Pearson and then Claudio Ranieri, but it might have been, I don't know. But yeah, it is working. It's a different way to run a football club. Because obviously Brentford, up until fairly recently, didn't have a reserve team, but now they had the other B team, I think, because Romeo Beckham's in it, isn't he?
Yeah. I'm just thinking, you say there about Leicester. I don't think the data would have said, oh, you should sign a 45-year-old Esteban Cambiasso, but here we are.
But it might have got Kante in. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because I mean, there was that tweet that went round at the time, wasn't there? Someone going, "Hello, Middlesbrough. You should definitely sign this young lad called N'Golo Kante. He's going to be one of the big boys in years to come." Middlesbrough were like, they gave a flippant answer on Twitter because obviously, why would they take a Twitter person seriously? And then it was they were talking about Kante, and look what happened. But yeah, I fully agree. It's like any argument in football, isn't it? People always just twist the things to suit their narrative. So using the likes of Southampton and Leicester against likes of Brighton and Brentford, of course they're going to do it when they don't agree with it.
Yeah, it's not a kind of one way is right, one way is wrong. If you've got the personnel behind it and you fully commit to a system, you're bound to see results. If you go half-arsed in it, and like you said, if you're changing stuff, if you're getting people in who are bringing in their own teams and that, it's going to fall flat on its face. Anything in football needs time eventually, whether that's on the pitch or, like you're saying, behind the scenes.
Hear, hear. Now, for the first time in it feels like several months, it's time for everybody's favourite segment. It's What Happened to That Wunderkind.
And this week, we're talking about Kleberson. Son.
I don't know the next line. Kleberson.
Yes.
Son. Yeah.
It's a bit different from other ones because usually in the Wunderkind segment, we look at someone who breaks through into a team at 17 and then gets that big money move and then everything falls off a cliff. For Kleberson, it kind of...
He had an impressive World Cup, didn't he? And then he didn't. Yeah. He's the El Hadji Diouf of his day.
He's the El Hadji Diouf of the kind of defensive playmaker. But Jose Cleberson Pereira, to give him his full name, and infamous for a spell at Man U. But he was born June 79 in Brazil, joined Atletico Paranaense in his youth, made his first team debut in 1999. 2001, he was a vital part of their midfield. They won the Brazilian League. And Brazil manager Big Phil Scolari saw him and thought, he's not bad, him. When it came to the Korea Japan World Cup, he was the only member of the Paranaense team who just won the league called up to the squad. And he had substitute appearances, but then he was played as a kind of in a 5-man midfield. So it was him and Gilberto Silva, kind of like deep. Gilberto Silva obviously doing more of the defensive legwork, allowing Kleberson to kind of press on a little bit, pick out some passes. During the tournament, I think it was against England, he had a decent display after coming on. And then after that, he was a starter, got an assist in the World Cup final. Brazil won the World Cup. And then, obviously, as we've seen with many World Cups, they were like, right, Europe come knocking. Barcelona looked at him. Newcastle looked at him. Leeds United and Celtic. But Alex Ferguson's Man United signed him in the summer of 2023 for £6.5 million.
2003.
Oh, God, I've written 2023 here. I did these notes in bed. But £6.5 million in 2003, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but then that's an all right outlay for a player. Leeds were in pole position, but Kleberson wasn't leaving until he could marry his girlfriend when she turned 16, which is the legal age of consent in Brazil. Different cultures, not talking about it. That's what happened. So the thought was from United, they signed Kleberson and thought, great, we'll slot him in because Juan Sebastian Veron didn't really pull up any trees at United. He was off to Chelsea, and they thought, okay, he'll become the deep lying playmaker for United, similar to the role he had for Brazil. Cracking, let's get it going. Second game for United, and he picks up an injury and would only make 16 appearances in all comps in 2003, 2004, but he did score twice against Blackburn, one against Blackburn, one against Everton, and he did manage to win the FA Cup and the Copa America with Brazil in this time. So not bad. But, you know, after playing such a pivotal role in the World Cup, they thought, right, he needs to really kick on. 2004, 2005, he's had one season in England. Think, oh, you'll settle now. Let's see how he goes. And 14 appearances in all competitions. He was then sold to Besiktas for €2.95 million on a 3-year deal. He won the Turkish Cup, won the Turkish Super Cup, but after 2 seasons, he said, my wages aren't being paid on time. I want out. And he wanted out. And during this time, he'd missed 25 games through injury, so injuries were starting to play their part. So he was frozen out of the Brazil side at this time. He was missing games for Turkey. He wasn't getting paid on time. He was unhappy. He walked out 2 years into a 3-year deal. September 2007, he signed for Flamengo on a free, but was ineligible to play until the next February because of the way he exited Besiktas. He was ordered to pay €3.18 million for a breach of contract, and this was later to reduce to $1 million. But still, it hurts, doesn't it? It doesn't matter how much money you're making if you're ordered to pay that much back. So he's back in Brazil. He's in his late 20s now, but he started slowly for Flamengo. He's playing in the reserves, but by 2009, 29 years old, he'd established himself back in the first team. Then he dislocated his shoulder. He was out again, but recovered quickly and helped Flamengo win the Brazilian League. He got called back up to the Brazil national squad by Dunga, but only managed one appearance at the 2010 World Cup, and that was his last in a Brazil shirt. So 2011, he's 31, heads back to Atletico Paranaense for a season, then back to Flamengo for a season, then 2 seasons at Brazilian side Bahia. Then, like all old Brazilian footy stars, he made his way to the MLS in 2013 for the Philadelphia Union for 1 season, then the North American Soccer League for 2 seasons with Indy 11, then a final season with Fort Lauderdale Strikers in 2016. So, like I was saying, it's different from other kind of wunderkinds because it's not like he broke out on a global scale at 17. He was in his early 20s, but the fact that he had, like we said, that progression from playing well in Brazil, playing well for Brazil, win the World Cup United, that's enough of a curve for when it dovetails to look like a dramatic dovetail. But like we said, World Cup winner, FA Cup winner, won the Turkish Cup and the Super Cup. He won the Brazilian League a couple of times. And since then, since 2017, he's still in the US. He worked as first coach of Philadelphia Union's Youth Academy from 2017, took over their B team in 2022. And since 2022, he's worked as the assistant coach of New York City FC. And he's credited his work with Fergie and Phil Scolari for shaping his mentality on the pitch. But said for him, the reason it didn't work out in United is he just couldn't adapt his style of play to the Premier League.
Fair enough, because it came at a weird time for Man United as well, because that was the Jemba years as well.
Oh, Big Eric.
Yeah, Big Eric, as everyone called him. But yeah, as you say, Veron didn't work, he didn't work, Jemba didn't work. Roy Keane was getting towards the end of his time in England. So yeah, it was a weird time for Man United in that midfield.
Well, yeah, again, talking about that kind of like those weird years for Man United's midfield, when Kleberson got his call back up to Brazil in 2009, it was mainly as a reserve for Anderson, who was at United for far longer than I remembered as well.
He was the dog's bollocks until he wasn't. I remember him, when the papers go, oh, he's got fat. Well, he's not,
Yeah.
But fat for a footballer, I guess. And he just sort of went off the rails completely, didn't he? I don't know. He might have done.
But it's not as sad a story of a wunderkind this week. I thought we'd have a bit of, brevity, because considering I'm coming off a birthday and all that, and I'm in a relatively good mood, I thought we'll have a nice one in Kleberson.
Yeah, he won a World Cup. It could be worse. It could be worse. We go on to the Roberto Mailbagio. Please submit to ross@holdandgive.com. We only have 2 this week because that's all we received. It was a barren wasteland, was the Roberto Mailbagio. So that's ross@holdandgive.com. Good morning, afternoon and evening, gents. A simple question for the Mailbagio. Other than your obvious answers of Shearer for Ross or Gerrard for Clive, which player do you think has or had the best suited or most underrated name when screamed on commentary as they're kicking it into the goal hole? One of my picks, having given it at least 30 seconds thought, would be Collymore. Not for me. Collymore closing in. Oh, it's still in my head there. Keep up the good work, lads. Alex from Sunderland. Sunderland.
I'll go first. I went back to where my heart and my memory and my mind reside. I went back to the 90s. And the first 2 that came to mind were Davor Suker and the King of Fiorentina,
Battigol, yeah, that was going to be one of mine. My mind goes back to slightly after that, and it's Clive Tilsley on ITV on a Champions League night. And he'd go, Solskjaer! Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with Clive Tilsley is a match made in heaven.
We had a game of 5-a-side years ago, one of the ones where we haven't played for a while, so we were just getting back into the swing of things. And we were saying that goals don't count unless you say someone's name before it. And the only person who remembered was my mate Steve Thorpe. Picked it up on the left, and I just hear him quietly go, "Reset!" And he smacked it into the top corner. Fantastic.
It better have been with his left foot.
No, his right foot.
It doesn't count then. You can't shout Risa for that.
He didn't release the Kraken properly, Ross. I'll tell you that for free.
But there we go. I'm going to go Solskjaer for man. You've gone Battigol, and the other one you said that I can't remember.
Davor Suker.
Yeah. Hi, Ross and Jack. Since my welcome to Brighton Hove Albion fullback Purvis Estepinian, what are you talking about, was destroyed by Ross, I have come back with another. After watching some basketball, I think it might be fun to have an all-star game like they do at the end of the season, but we do North versus South instead of East versus West. I know it's an extra game in an already crowded season, but I think it might be a nice way to end the season and also a bit of fun. Players will be decided by team of the season and maybe votes, max 2 per club, unless that's not possible. Let me know what you think. Loving the content and the channel. That comes from Scotty Spencer.
In a fantasy land, it's a good idea. I like the All-Star weekend of basketball. I like the All-Star weekend of baseball as well, because they do, the dunk and the home run competitions is what I mainly watch rather than the actual All-Star matches themselves. But in reality, it would be far too risky, especially if people are just flying in with those blood and thunder tackles. And also, I think that the definition of North and South would be hard, because you'd have just Brummies crying, wouldn't you?
It would change every year as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Yeah. I think if you had, I don't know how to balance it, probably like London versus England, because there's that many teams in London, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe it is. London is where the south cuts off and everything else above London is north. I think it's a good idea, but I would do it instead of the Charity Shield.
Ooh.
That's where I'd put it. I wouldn't do it at the end of the season. I'd do it as the curtain raiser. Book of cliches. The curtain raiser for the season. Because I think, obviously, it's just... The Community Shield is a friendly until you're involved in it. Then it's a proper game. But I think everyone accepts it's a friendly. So maybe replace it with that and, a similar trophy getting won by the winning team. I like the North versus South thing, but as I say, it depends... And maybe you have to max it to 2 players per club as well, or maybe 1 player per club. I don't know how it would work. You'd have to, because otherwise you just have Manchester City and Liverpool versus Arsenal and Chelsea. Not Chelsea, Arsenal and Spurs. Sorry.
That sounds like a weird tag match, that, doesn't it? I'm just imagine 44 players on a really wide pitch.
But I think there's some legs now. I just think, the different time of the year rather than the last game of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much, but like you were saying there, that you got the dunk competition, the home run competition for the basketball and the baseball. If you had something like a audacious goal thing.
The audacious goal competition. You really are a romantic when it comes to football there, Jack Atkins.
Well, I do love an audacious goal. Like I said, I once played with a lad who said, John Arne Reeser under his breath as he struck a ball. But have you ever watched like many basketball dunk competitions?
Never. I've seen the half-time one where they make the punter come down from the crowd and win a big boatload of money.
Yeah, so the dunk competition's All-Star Weekend, and they get more and more outrageous. So it's just, you've got your one player who's going up for the dunk, and they can have props, they can have another teammate setting them up. So like one person would throw it up and they do a 360 and dunk it. Blake Griffin once did one where his mate popped out of the sunroof of a car and threw the ball up, and he dove. Have jumped over people, sat on chairs. People have done all this stuff with mascots. So if you could do something like that with football, like, I know, Erling Haaland diving off a ladder or something stupid like that.
I'm fully game for that. Fully game for what you've just said there. Make it happen. Yeah.
And I think as well, I don't know if this baseball or basketball, they have a race for all the mascots as well. So I just want to see Gunnosaurus pelting it around while being chased by Mighty Red, being chased by
the West Brom Boiler.
West Brom's Boiler and Peter Beardsley. And just having them legging it around the pitch. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why we don't do the mascot races somewhere, because they do it in the cricket and it's always a great time.
Because we're a bit stuffy. We hate mascots, don't we? In English football, we're just like, no time and place for that.
Can you believe there's a fully grown adult in that costume? I can't believe you do that for a job, eh?
Go get a job, a real job, you wanker. If you're not following out there, I know you don't really use it much anymore. I try not to use it as much, but on Twitter /X, call it what you want. Mascots Minute Silence is a fantastic page to follow. It's brilliant.
Unbelievable scenes, and it's the perfect timing. Well, we've just had the perfect time again for those cracking pictures, the Remembrance Sunday stuff, and there's a mascot there bowing their head. Anyway, that was the Roberto Mailbagio for this week. Ross at holdandgive.com for next week's. We'll wrap it up there. Jack Atkins, any closing remarks before we go away?
No, no. Hello. Bye.
Hello and bye. Before you go, please make sure to click one of these 2 videos that appear on screen right now if you are watching on YouTube, because staying on this channel helps out the algorithm and all that kind of bollocks. Are you all right there?
Yeah, I would just have my head in my hands for just how crap I am at this job sometimes. But you know what? It's the giving season, Ross, and I'm giving myself a bit too much of a hard time here. What can I say?
Yeah, don't hold yourself down like that. Just keep giving, Jack Atkins. That's it. Click one of the 2 videos, please. We'll see you next week for some more Hold and Give Football podcast. Yeah.